Ayun na. Check mo nga. Meron. Mag-iiba na. Saan siya? Ah, ito. Oh. Sana mag-isip sa Pati ba kayo makakasisend ko? Send ako ng bagong link
Ay, sa kanila.
sa inyo.
Hindi na yung link ko. Sa ano?
Amen. CSO. Dapat may test na magsalita. Mali. Ano, papakinggan namin sa labas.
Okay, check this, check my check. Check. Check my check this. Okay, check. Check this. Check.
Di ba pag sila kumakatanong sa anong link? Pero may ano isa sa link? Pwede ko naman line. Mic ko lang.
Or in this situation. Well, now you don't have to imagine. With Calibr Pro, you can finally experience AI-powered recruitment. And when you combine our technology with these people, great things happen. Top talent expertly recruited. Endorsements in just 7 days. And account managers who know exactly what you need. What if AI can help you with this situation?
Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, check. Check, check. This, check. Check, check. This, say, check. Check, check. Mic, check, check. This. Hey, hey, check.
good afternoon, everyone. Yes. So I'm happy to see very familiar faces here. Well, apart from the students, current students that we have. So welcome to AIM. I am Anika and I am from the Career Services Office. So this learning session is actually a collaborative event of CSO, the Career Services Office, and the Recruitment and Admissions Office. So this afternoon, our topic will be workforce trends and opportunities, and we're happy to welcome our guests, our friends from Caliber. So later on, I think they'll do their own introduction about Caliber. So just to introduce our speakers for this afternoon, we have Chito Lapitan. Chito is a computer engineer who worked with several multinational ID companies over the last 5 years. He joined Caliber in 2017 after understanding the company's goal and experiencing the hardships of applying to jobs in the Philippines. So, as a key manager, he handles Caliber's enterprise accounts, and with his technical background, he's able to fully discuss and break down Caliber's technology to customers. He also helped build new tools and processes for the customer success team. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. And we're going to talk about today on workforce trends, especially focusing on how you guys, when you leave this program, where you can go, where you can work, and what these opportunities will be in the next coming few years. So, before I start, I want to ask a simple question. Like, in the past 2 weeks, how many here have bought anything online? Anyone? Raise your hand. All right. And then of those people, were they impulse buys or not? No, no. All right. So disciplined pala. Ako pala yung ganun. I mean, sometimes I'm bored and I'm like, Lazada will give me an update on my phone that, oh, there's a sale. And then like, do I really want to buy this? I just wanted to talk about that for a moment because that's a good example. That's an example later I'll use in terms of how companies are using different techniques these days to get people to consume more and using different technologies in industries that aren't necessarily considered like 10 years ago to be technology companies. These days, they are considered to be technology companies. So trends in Philippine employment, we're gonna start this discussion off with what the landscape looks like and what it's shaping up to be within the next 3 to 5 years. So here's a list of some top startups in the Philippines. The question here really is, what do they have in common? Because you see different companies in different industries, right? You have Grab, who's who's in transportation. Rappler is a news aggregator or social media. Coins, who here has a Coins wallet? No? Yeah, sir has one? Okay. So I have a Coins wallet too. I use it to pay my bills. And at the moment, if you pay your bills on Coins, you get a rebate. And you can even do load on Coins. OLX, if you've ever bought secondhand items. And then Cropital is a way to fund farmers without middlemen. And I've actually put in money in Cropital at some point. And it's a give and give. It's a win-win. They get to fund their farm. You get some money back after the investment. But the question is, firstly, are these startups? And when I say startups, what's the first company that comes to your mind? Anyone, shout an answer. Like, what's an example of a startup when I say that? What would you say? Anyone? Facebook? What else? Google? Anyone else? Because so Facebook and Google, do they have 50 employees? Do they have 100 employees? Do they have 1,000 employees? If a company has 1,000 employees, are they a startup? Because for sure, Uber, people would think of as a startup, but how big are they? Or how long has Google existed in Silicon Valley? And so it's a difficult question to answer of what defines a startup, but the biggest way it's usually described as is that it's a technology company or any company that disrupts the environment with their technology or with their advancement. When you talk about Uber and Grab, they've changed how people use transportation. It's not public transportation, it's still privatized, but it's still a transportation method that didn't really exist 5 years ago. When you talk about how Facebook took the landscape of social media by storm, they did it by getting people to sign in, and then evolving the social media past what we used in the past, diba? There are now Facebook Marketplace. You can now buy and sell items on Facebook. I recently rented out an apartment on Facebook, and I posted there. And I've never rented out a space using Facebook. I've always done it the traditional way. And within like an hour of posting my for rent posting on Facebook, I got 100 responses, and I was completely shocked that my inbox was exploding every hour. But it's an example of how they're changing systems. And that's an important discussion point because these startups are changing traditional roles and traditional discussions, and the rest of the world is looking for a way to catch up because not only are the roles changing, meaning employees do anything and everything, but also that also means top talent want to work at startup. That's why you see a lot of people, even if the pay isn't that high, they'll move to a startup because they believe in the goal, they believe in what they're trying to do. One of my favorite apps in my phone is called Pocket. Pocket is an app where you can save videos and links to your phone. I do it a lot when I'm on the road and I want to save a link because I don't want to read it on my phone. Pocket in 2016 had 20 million registered users and over a billion saved links and videos. Their team at the time was 20 people large. They are a testament to scaling in technology, but also a testament to what great talent can do when focused with um, a technology that they want to work in an environment that they want to work for. And what is the ripple effect of this towards the rest of traditional and long time companies? It's that they have to catch up now because even if big companies do have the higher salary, if you look at trends in employment, what you'll see is that most of them these days, a lot of people will put income as a second priority over actual benefits. Benefits like telecommuting and work from home, free meals and food allowances, and then sleeping quarters and free housing. So actually, all of these three things we actually provide in Caliber. That's why we have a lot of top talent because they say that the pay is okay. I mean, pay is pay, money is money. But when we allow people to work at their own pleasure, they're able to output an amount of efficiency that's not really seen in a lot of people because they're not bogged down by 9 to 5s, things like that, and they're able to work at, you could say, a leisurely pace. But of but when people are driven by purpose, what happens is they're not gonna show up and like, I'll finish this tomorrow. They're like, this is my passion and I want to finish this today. And they want to strive for that sense of accomplishment, especially in startups where you don't necessarily have a lot of runway. So for big companies, they can survive on their production capacity, right? But if you're a startup, we have to get investors' money in 3 months, in 6 months. So it's you make it to the finish line or die trying. What have big companies learned from this? That if they want to hire millennial talent or new younger generation of people, they have to sort of adhere to these standards now. That there's now an employer brand. So how many here have bought something off Lazada? All right, a lot of you. But how many here know Lazada as a good employer? See, not really anyone. So that's an example of companies having to build their now employer branding by saying, let's work at Lazada because it's a great place to be at. A really common employer brand that we hear about is Google, right? Google has a lot of bells and whistles. They have free bikes, they have free housing, free meals. But they're not a startup because they're several thousands large. They're a big company with offices around the world. But they've adopted to that style because they know it's what's drawing better talent to them. So when you think about it, this purpose-driven employment method has allowed us to not necessarily ask for more benefits, but to ask for benefits that we want from our employers. So that doesn't come without problems. And that's why I want to talk about the culture clash, where different companies who adopted their employer brand necessarily don't consolidate it to their traditional styles of work to begin with. The first one is really understanding what new technology means, diba? It's so easy to throw around the word AI or machine learning or data science without necessarily, if you don't invest in a team and a management team to help align what that means to your company, sablay lang. And then, of course, hiring good leadership means hiring someone who's not only skilled in management, but also skilled in the technology you're going to employ them for. When I asked for AIM's breakdown of students, something that appeared to me, or I would say surprised, but highlighted the distribution of students, was a lot of students here actually come from STEM backgrounds, and that's actually a good trend that we should be seeing in the Philippines. That people from STEM are taking up management courses to allow them to not only drive the STEM field but also be able to teach other people in that field. Because often enough, so who is from STEM? Okay, a few people. A lot of people that I've spoken to in I come from engineering, but also in IT, is that they'll often remark that managers are an unnecessary overhead, or they'll sometimes talk about things they have no knowledge about, and that comes from people in the technical role who don't see their management teams having the same technical acuity, and that they don't translate or transform that information better. And that's where that hybrid is all coming from STEM graduates taking up management and taking up management and leadership skills to necessarily gain that trust and gain that respect from both upper management and their smaller teams as well. Next is that R&D is not a revenue generating section of your company. Most people expect that if they put up a data science department in FMCG, in retail, it's that you will help me understand supply chain management better, or you will help me understand just in time delivery better by having good numbers. But numbers are just numbers. In data science, they talk about garbage in, garbage out, and data science and R&D should never be treated as a strictly revenue generating department, because you don't know what you're getting until you try it. So failure in projects is common in R&D, but if management does not like failure, they shouldn't be putting up an R&D team to begin with. And that's really I think, to quote Mark Zuckerberg here, is really move fast and break things, where that's where data science is going towards right now. They have all this data, they have a mountain of data, but they don't know where it's pointing towards. As an example, Caliber has a data science team, and we try to figure out what makes a good candidate experience, what makes candidates want to apply to a company, and um, how do they feel about recruiters depending on certain variables. Has anyone here ever felt like a recruiter ignored them because they didn't reply after 2 to 3 weeks of an application? Anyone, sir? Yes. So getting ignored from your application is the most common reason for a candidate to give a recruiter a negative score. Another thing we found is that what what was a weird correlation between hires and candidates was, the more messages a candidate received, the more likely they were to pursue that application at certain points. That's an example of data we had, but we didn't know until we processed it. Lastly, the end of these three things is that employees who belong to these departments often feel that they're lost or are disposable because they don't know where they are in the company and what their purpose is. They were employed as data scientists, as R&D, as programmers, but they don't know exactly what the purpose of it. And later we'll go on to that idea of market fit and product fit. How do we ensure that what we're building is a part of that market? I think a good example of this is banking apps. If you've ever used banking apps that are clunky or really hard to log into, that's an example of a company that's very traditional. Banking is very traditional in the Philippines, right? But they made an app and it was just really hard to use. I use Union Bank and Security Bank, and they have great apps. I can log in with my fingerprint. I can lock my ATM and credit card from my phone, stuff like that. And that's an example of them being very conscientious about what product they're offering to their customers, and not just saying that let's make an app. Lastly, what is the effect of these things to candidates? The biggest effect is burnout and attrition. So when we look at top talent, we look at the top companies in IT. In the top seven, candidate resignation rates or the longevity of tenureship does not exceed 3 years. Google has a maximum um, tenureship or average tenureship of 2 years. In Uber, it's 1.7. In some places, 1.5. And you think about it, if this Google, Uber, and these other top tech companies already, what more in a traditional company where they've never delved in technology in the past before, where they're only FMCG, they're only retail? How do you bring new things to that kind of market? And one of the solutions we want to point out in today's discussion is that comes from a management team, one that necessarily understands the market and the product that they're doing as the central goal, but as well as it's the conduit. You are the person who helps levy middle managers, upper managers, and your own teams to understand where the goal is. So the reason why attrition can be very high in these companies is that the candidate feels they don't have a voice in the company. And the only way that's really served is by having a manager that helps understand where the voice of their team is and where to funnel that towards in terms of making sure the concern is set as a whole and not, small voices in a crowd. So has anyone here ever done employee evaluations, standard rank curve employee evaluations, or experienced that? Because if you have, you might know the feeling of they have to rank all of the employees in a company and then split them along certain standard curves. There's the middle of the standard deviation, there's the left and the right. And there's always someone who has to be placed on the extremes of both sides. So even if you have a candidate or an employee that has a really good output, because of standard ranking, they're in the middle. Or it's hard to make an employee shine because of standard ranking. And that's where middle management really feels the biggest loss of employee attrition. And they also feel the biggest hit towards having to rank their employees, even if all of them may be exemplary to begin with. So what do we see now in trends? There are three managers that we want to talk about today: product managers, data science managers, and UI UX managers. Um, just to be clear, these are actually people who work in Caliber who do those three roles. They are actually people who we work with. That's Casper, Ivan, and Ria. They're people that I work very closely with as well. And there are three different people with three different roles in Caliber. And as a technology company, we're also going to talk about how these people can exist in traditional companies as well. So what are they like? Okay, the product manager is all about the long-term vision. It's all about the product, and he has to understand the market. One of the easiest ways to describe a product manager is that they're a mini CEO. Why? They understand what the product is and sets the goal for it. Meaning, a really good example of this is when you're trying to build something and you have to know the steps to get there. When you talk about the MVP, right, you have to have the minimum product. And it should be the product manager who tells you this is the very start of this product and everything else is bells and whistles. They're the ones who will tell you what we need to go to market and what the market not wants and needs. So it's not just about being a programmer. Product managers often will have business sense, marketing sense, because they want to connect the needs towards the solution. The Wall Street Journal actually wrote an article like 2 years ago how the product manager is should be the coveted role for MBA graduates, and they wrote that in a very detailed article on why MBAs are the way to product management because of your ability, your supposed ability to understand market and market values to create a product that's connected to that one has reach because you have to reach your target market, but two, that is something that people will want to buy into, and that's why they wrote that piece. So, what companies have product managers? Disney has one, Starbucks has one, United Health, Robinsons in the Philippines has product manager, and even Uniqlo. So me, I'm a big fan of Uniqlo. About 80% of what I'm wearing today is Uniqlo. And they're an example of a company where you go inside a store and do they show off their fashion or do they show off their technology? Because when you look at a Uniqlo product line, diba, they'll say this AirRhythm, this is great for hot places. This is heat tech, this is great for cold places. The shirt I'm wearing is the non-iron shirt where I put it in the laundry, I took it out, and I didn't even iron it, and it would look like this. And I was like, wow, that actually works. And see how a product manager in Uniqlo thought about that technology, and they probably thought about how to market it. And that's an example of a retail company employing technology to their advantage. With Disney and Starbucks, it's all about creating new products for new markets, right? It used to be all about toys and shows. Now you have apps. Now you have what do you call this? My girlfriend plays this app on her phone where you like build a city and get coins. It's a Disney product, and there are microtransactions there. And microtransactions, they're a completely different discussion on how that technology works or how that makes millions. Data science managers. For these people, it's highly technical, and really, a good data science manager is really focused on understanding technical information. Meaning, the only way data science managers earn the trust of their data science team is by being able to compete at their level or knowing or letting the team know that literally my intelligence is above yours in a sense, because you can't necessarily lead a team of data scientists if you aren't able to walk the talk at this level. But there are also people who look for applications of the data science field, meaning there are lots of ways to handle data, there are ways to present data and test data, and they're the ones who will say this is the correct testing method, and he's going to explain to not only his team but also to the CEO why these numbers matter or why these numbers have this important value. So essentially, they're the ones they're a good example of really being people with math or a physics background that went into management as well. And that really goes into the idea of using story as structured data. If you ever look at an Excel sheet and said, you don't understand the numbers, but when you present it in a graph, when you present trends as trends, that's a storyline, because numbers are just numbers until you create the timeline, until you create the events that led to those numbers, that led to your discussion. So companies like PNG, Alaska Milk, Manulife, they have their own data science teams, because now they understand that for places like FMCG, they think about how much they're going to produce, how much they're going to sell, and they want to talk about evolving trends. That it's not just about making a good stock delivery; it's about delivering exactly the amount of products and knowing how even things like what month it is affects their own sales. Lastly, UI, UX managers or user experience. A lot of people who go into this are actually come from customer experience, because their only goal is really to put the customer at the center of everything. They have to go out and do focus group discussions. They have to go out and understand who their customers really are. And often it can be people from both marketing and advertising backgrounds, because they're people who spend their lives understanding how to make the product marketable to those people. And they always champion the customer's needs. So obviously a lot of media companies have user experience managers. Union Bank has one. Home Credit, a microfinance company, has one, and even PS like so it sounds like a traditional role, but it's mixed in by the fact that a lot of people are also becoming self-taught in both product management and data science. That's why the role has necessarily evolved. Now, before, marketing was only traditional or digital, and now it's both. And now there's also an active market when you talk about how apps work, how notifications work. Mm, and that's a good example. Actually, that's a good example, really. Apps, like how your apps feel when you're changing something. So when you talk about Facebook, right? Sometimes you'll see a new button. Sometimes you'll see the interface has moved a bit. The button went from the top to the bottom. Facebook has a very A/B testing heavy philosophy, well, they will release two different designs to separate groups and see how that changes how they press buttons or longevity on the platform. And then later on, you'll see it's suddenly gone. The changes have either been reverted or everyone was moved to the new format. A/B testing centric managed UX styles have become emergent in recent trends. That let's build all these things, test them out one by one, and see where the market responds to the most. So that's where UI and UX management comes really into play. They're the ones who will really say when we want to test with the customers, because obviously playing with your customers too much will cause dissatisfaction, but also not taking that step forward might also mean other people are beating you to the market on that idea. So, what are ideal competencies for managers in this regard? So, again, they are intermediaries from technical and business, because ideally, when the product manager tells the CEO this is the next thing we're building, it has to be essentially a number scheme, right? Why this is good for the market, why this is important. And for them, they also have to be contributive to technical teams as well. I know it's difficult sometimes, like the question of are there non-technical product managers? And the answer is yes. And the reason that they thrive is because they're still able to contribute in their own way to the big picture item, but still levy resources in non-technical discussions in terms of having a quota or having the quotation for how long a product will take to build. So product managers necessarily don't necessarily have to know all the ins and outs of their product, but at least understand in theory their framework so that they can understand how much time this would cost to build. Workflow management and flexibility. So because you're moving a traditional company into a new trend or a new role, there has to be someone necessarily who understands what must stay and what must go. Because if you're still stuck in an old work style, uh, necessarily new employees might not like it, but radically changing all your workflows might alienate people who've spent their lives working on the same workflow over and over again. So it becomes a give and take necessarily of how do we get the best from both worlds, or at least migrate and transition everyone to the correct workflow that not everyone might agree with, but at some point will understand is what's best for everyone. And then lastly, of course, presenting all this data to your managers, your co-managers, or upper management, because again, at the end of the day, if it is a numbers game, what matters really is understanding what effect this has on everyone. Um, so before I continue, I guess are there any questions? None, because I guess the focus really here is that we wanted to look at is we didn't want to narrow the field down to necessarily just technology companies. We understand that there is a diverse set of companies that people want to work in, and a lot of them are from traditional roles. That's why we want to talk about examples from retail and from FMCG and from marketing, because all of these companies have space for all these management teams and these teams in general. So what we want to really give off here is that product managers, data science managers, and user experience managers are people who have understood that technology comes from these innovations and should be applied to specific players as well. A good example of emergent technologies in the Philippines is that Philippine land is hard to survey just because there are very old documents documents of where land is and where borders are, and hiring people to survey your land is actually very expensive in the Philippines, or at least takes a lot of manpower. There are a few companies now that employ drones to survey the land, and by mathematical models are able to compute land size and land area. And they're a team, and their company is like 10 people large, and they're able to, and they go to Central Luzon and they survey acres and acres of land, and they're able to do so because they adopted drone technology. And that's how they're competing with the rest of traditional surveying companies as well. And that's an example of engineering technology. Questions? So if there aren't any further questions, I'll hand it off to Romel. He's going to talk more on workforce trends in terms of salaries and other things as well.
Thank you, Chito, for that inciting talk. Now let's proceed to Romel. Our next speaker is Romel Malenab. So Romel joined Caliber in August 2017, so same as Chito last year. So he is the customer success advocate with 2 years of experience working in human resources with a focus in recruitment in the United States. He joined Caliber with a desire to improve the overall experience of recruitment here in the Philippines from both the recruiters and job seekers alike. He works with a variety of clients from different industries to share his experience and knowledge to level up the recruitment success through the Caliber platform. So, without further ado, Romel.
Thank you. Okay, so first things first, is everyone here about to graduate, or do we have the incoming students or who are about to attend AIM? There we go. All right. Well, I guess welcome, guys. But just keep in mind, this talk is really focused on not just the individuals who are about to graduate, but also the ones who are about to start studying here at AIM. Because keep in mind, it's not just about it's not, it's not like you're going to stop looking for opportunities, just because you're studying for an entire year, or maybe like a year and a half, depending on your program. But it also helps set you up to map out your own career, because if there's anybody here who's in control of your future, it would be yourself. Okay. Oh. So to start things off, based on the information provided for us by the Commission of Higher Education. So I guess this is applicable for everybody in the room. For the academic year of 2016 to 2017, there are about 359,335 reported graduates for the discipline groups of business admin, engineering and technology, and information and technology. It's quite a mouthful. But as you can see, majority of the individuals who graduated actually last year is focused on business admin and related courses. So is everybody here on the MBA program or any other programs? Just the MBA. Wow. Okay. Well, I guess moving on. All right. Thanks so much, ma'am. I really appreciate the information. So, um, why does this matter? Why do you think it's applicable to you? Actually, the answer would be this. So, what do you guys think this is? Job fair. Exactly. So the numbers that I showed you in the previous slide doesn't even take into account the graduates of 2018. So I'm assuming that's about around the same number. You would say so. That's 600,000 graduates. So would you like the idea of actually lining up in one of those things? God knows I don't. All right. So, but the other reason why does this matter is because it's competition. It doesn't matter if you're lining up there or you're doing your search online or whatnot. What's important is you're competing with, so this is a total of about 20 students, 25. So you're basically competing with 500,975 students. So think about that. Or it's not even just students, it's also unemployed professionals looking to build their career or resume their career. So to get you started, you need to have an idea of what to expect or what to look ahead upon. So for you to be able to look ahead, you need to know what to expect. So here, according to Robert Walters, one of the largest recruitment companies in the world, here in the Philippines, there is a rise in companies expanding their infrastructure due to the growth of digitalization. It has prompted companies to open opportunities in IT, financial services, and human resources. So, are these industries applicable to everybody in the room? So, who here is in HR? HR, that's one. Banking and financial services. Okay, that's three. How about IT? Any IT students in the room? No. Okay, we can just leave them alone. We'll be okay. All right. So at least you know that you have opportunities within your industry. It's just a matter of how you're going to map out your own success. Okay. So this next few slides will be informational. So unlike what Chito was explaining to us a while ago about the significance of employer branding or whatnot, this is just straightforward information. Does that mean that it's accurate or this is what you should expect as students coming into the or resuming your professional career? Not exactly, but it's a start. It's a start for everybody. So the different industries by AIM students with the MBA, MSIB, MSDS, and the MDM degree are focused on human resources, banking and financial services, IT, accounting, and marketing. Okay, so first up, of course, is human resources. There's only one person in the room in HR. What good for you? You're loaded with more information. So best of luck, I guess. Sir, do you have at least 5 years of experience? No. That's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's perfectly fine. Keep in mind, this information is for 2017 and 2018. Of course, um, does it mean that you'll be getting this kind of salary if you have 5+ years of experience? Probably not, because sometimes even a company like Meralco, as you can see in this room right here, just because it's in 2017, they offered at least, I would say, 150,000 pesos monthly for a compensation and benefits manager, doesn't mean you're going to get that. What it means is Meralco, depending on what budget they would allocate to this position, that's what probably you're going to get. Does that mean that you don't lobby and make an argument to get the salary that you want? I'm sure. Why not? That's always the challenge when you're negotiating for salaries. But at least you know where to start and you know what to haggle with, quote unquote haggling. All right. So at least from the highest salary here would be for the HR director at 9 million. So that's about 750,000 pesos monthly. I wish I had that position. I'll be okay. So of course, banking and financial services. So who here again is from the financial service sector? So okay, um, does product control apply to you guys? Product control, does this apply? Or does any of these positions apply to the three of you? Hmm. Unsure, but that's perfectly fine because as I've mentioned, you're building your career or resuming your career. It's up to you how you want to make the most of it. So as you can see here, comparatively from 2017, there's an increase in your salary by at least 200,000 pesos. So 1.7 to 1.9, 1.6 to 1.8. For please pay attention to this one right here, data analytics, because we have two master students here from data science. So or three. Okay, that's good. There's three. So I know this is you're the pioneers of this program, I believe. So pay attention to that position, data analytics, because if you're interested in the financial services sector, maybe this is something that's applicable to you, depending on your field of interest, so to speak. Okay, so 1.6, that's maybe around at least 100,000 pesos and above. Sorry, like really suck at math whenever I'm doing talks. So I'd be the last guy to ask whenever you would ask for at least an average. So sorry. Okay, so does this chart or table apply to the banking and financial services people? Okay, so as you can see, there's an increase by at least 300,000 on some of these positions. Some have stayed the same, some have increased 200, but at least it's very promising because, again, as I've mentioned, as Chito has mentioned, in terms of the increase of digitalization with Union Bank and other banks, so the demand for your positions will increase, and and as a result, the salaries would increase as well. Okay. So for information technology, this is very or not that surprising for everybody, at least for me, because considering the growth of digitalization, information technology is really in demand. So regardless of who you are, if you have at least maybe 3 years of experience, you're already in demand. But we can ignore these individuals because I don't think there's anybody here from IT. I don't think so. Yeah, so I think we're okay. But hey, if you are interested, these are your statistics and maybe something that you can venture into if you're a sponge and if you're a sponge who's just addicted to gaining more knowledge. Okay. So anybody here who is in the field of accounting? Okay, there we go. So as you can see here, this is for the managerial, I'm sorry, or to the upper level positions. So does any of these positions apply to you? Or oh, you're in audit. So the previous slides apply. So for the financial services, I think there was like um, audit positions in those fields, but then again, that's perfectly fine. As you can see here, the highest salaries are for the chief financial officers at least 750,000, and as you go down, as you can see, at least your average would be around 150,000. Okay, so that I guess begs the question for everybody here: is it an advantage to have a master's degree? Because the data that you saw there doesn't really separate, undergraduate salary as compared to a master's degree. If you're studying at AIM, it surely is. You're actually in luck because um, your career services actually gave us some information. So thank you so much for that. For MBA placement, based on data last year in 2017 of a class size of 74, there's an annual increase in salary of 112%. And 93% of the graduate was placed in full-time employment within 3 months. Okay. For MSIB, increase of 88%, and full-time employment within 3 months is 245%. MDMs, 90% of full-time employment, annual post-MDM salary, so that's, I believe it would be somewhere around a million, that USD converted into peso. So that's a lot. Well, keep in mind before I move on to that next slide, that just because your career services can help you, should you rely on them to provide you with employment? No, because like I said initially, if there's anybody who's in control of your own future, it would be you. Okay, so it would be nice to have us for our career services to provide you assistance, but then again, if you want increased chances of a better salary or better situation, like flexible time for your work, or if you would rather be awake at 12 midnight working until 8 in the morning and then sleeping in the morning, so that's really up to you. So that's not something that career services can definitively promise us with. Okay, so with that in mind, how can Caliber help us? Because with us here in Caliber, we believe that it's not only the recruiters that would be the one to get all the fun, but also the job seekers as well. So as you can see here, I was hired by Caliber through Caliber. Fun fact. This is actually my profile on the Caliber job seeker account. Branding is always the key. So how many here have at least maybe 2 years of experience? Okay, that's good, because that's something that you should be able to add there. There's no limit into how much experience or how much information that you can place on your job experience. So if there's something that you would like to communicate with potential employers, why not place it there? This is not limited by 3 pages of resume or whatnot. Same as LinkedIn. So you're not limited by the information that you can provide on social media as well. So keep in mind that branding is always important when you're selling yourself to employers, that you're the best guy for any position within that company. Okay? And also the Caliber job board, because different opportunities are always around the corner. So who here, oh, sorry about that. So who here has a Caliber job seeker account? Wow, that's actually good. Congratulations. So boo to everybody else, not just kidding. So because different opportunities are always around the corner, and if you want to control, if you want to control your own career future, why not just go sign up to a online job board? Well, of course, we're more than just an online job board, but then again, um, we're better than everybody else. All right. So again, it's pretty straightforward information for me. So does anybody have any questions? Hmm. Sir? Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good question. What's your name, sir? I'm sorry. Martin. Okay. Thank you so much for the question, Martin. Uh, it's a good thing and the bad thing whenever you have when you have that much experience and then you need to change careers midway, because um, the one thing that you can definitely lobby to potential employers is your professional and managerial experience. You can lead a team, and you're a no nonsense person that they don't really have to tell you to get to work before you actually do your job. Then again, the question still lies in the fact that you don't really have much experience in marketing, so it's a tricky situation in that regard. So the key there is really how you're going to be able to brand yourself to potential employers that, hey, it's worth investing in me, that, hey, I don't really have much experience in marketing, but I'm a professional, and it's easy for me to learn new things, so it won't be a waste of time, so to speak, to invest or to train me in order to learn more about this industry. So does that answer your question? Okay. So hold on, let me hand it over to Chiso.
Yeah, I think with regards to when we actually ask companies about people who shift industries and how they understand it, we often talk to, especially with me when I handle enterprise clients, we ask them really, how do you deal with candidates who've come from different industries? And there's a mixed bag of reactions. More traditional companies still give primacy in industry in terms of, we gave them a profile like this person is 5 years, has a lot of experience, but comes from a different industry. This person is only 3 years, but is in the correct industry. And they more often than not chose the younger candidate just because they came from the industry. And that's something that we're really trying to look for ways to shift off, because we know that it shouldn't be a hard requirement all the time. We understand that sometimes it is. With Caliber, we don't give that much primacy to it all the time. So, but I will clarify or disclaimer at this point that it really differs per industry. Um, there are self-taught industries. There are industries where are very welcoming for self-taught people. Just yesterday, we welcomed the new software engineer. He's a registered architect and he's taking up electronics engineering, but he self-taught programming, and our development team thought that he was really good and that he should work for Caliber. And he found his passion in programming, I guess. And but he's an architect in real life already. Um, so I think the question really is what industry you're shifting to and how you can create a profile for yourself in that industry. With creatives, a lot of people who move to creatives try to work, if depending on the division of creatives that you're working on, they try to create a self profile first to try to show off their skills, and then show that they have the shared knowledge from where they already came from that also is applicable for a lot of hard skills. They also look for ways to self promote. I know it's not true for every industry. That's why I will disclaim that. But that's one way where employees are able to shift now their interests. Usually they do it by jumping to a different market completely or asking internally in the company if they can try doing it. Both exist and really happen, and I understand really. Um, when I talk this when I give the same discussion to students, I always say that shifting is something I wish colleges embraced more and shunned less, because it's really hard to know what you want to do after high school and then you move to a college, and then especially in the Philippines, right, where when you tell your parents I want to shift a course, it's like it sounds like you're wasting time or you're wasting money. But who really knew what they wanted out of high school? And that's really why, especially in careers, shifting is something that I also encourage. And if there's a transition towards it, you plan out the transition to whatever it is you're shifting to. And again, there are a lot of ways online now to learn those skills, to create profiles. And um, one other way is joining a startup, because they're more flexible in trying to understand that you might be a valuable player, and they'll give you that role and they'll let you work at it. And eventually, I guess, when you've proven that, that's when other people they move back to industry players, because they've already built their name in that specialization.
Hopefully that answers your question. All right. So any other thoughts? Thank you so much for that, Chito. Any thoughts and questions, or forever hold your peace? All right. Yes, ma'am. Hmm? From my experience. What's your name, ma'am? Carissa. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Carissa, for your question. So, Caliber would be a company that's open to shifting, because believe it or not, my experience is in human resources, but um, my position right now doesn't really do a lot of the things I did before in terms of recruiting. I give advice, or I consult with clients in terms of how they're successful in utilizing the Caliber platform, but that's nowhere near what I did before. So Caliber is one company, and it's, I would say, probably somewhere in the information and technology industry. Would you say? Yeah, because at least they recognize that your skill sets can be applicable into the other facets or into other positions. I know for one of my clients, Slide Genius, they're a United States-based company that's focused on presentations or slideshows. So when we were having a conversation once about their performance on the platform, they did mention to me that they shortlist all candidates because it didn't really matter what industry they're from. They just believe that you have something to offer. So it's not really something that you know companies are really straightforward in mentioning. It's just having an understanding on the feel of how they brand themselves as a company. So um,
I guess the other discipline there is, if it's an old school company and all the other players are old school as well, and there's no one disrupting them, they're less likely flexible. And banking is something that's taking a long time to catch up. Medical, they're trying very hard. So the other answer there is that it's not necessarily the industry, but understanding which team is the most able to provide this light. So I think that's when you go into understanding that marketing teams are now very digital friendly, and they now understand that there's a lot of ways to reach the market that old marketing never really thought of, was didn't exist back then. So there are still a lot of old companies in the Philippines that don't have the flexibility, but the way employees are getting ideas into them is it's coming from teams that have this power or have the budget to show that essentially that this effort is revenue generating. So I know it goes back against what I said earlier about how R&D is not necessarily always revenue generating, but that's at least what they try to show investors as the reason for why you want to do it, because it makes more money.
Does that answer your question? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Hmm. That's that's an interesting question because at least in my own personal experience, I worked in the United States and then actually came back here. To be honest, it took me 3 weeks before when I came back to even find a job. So it's a really slippery slope when it comes to that because I had a bunch of interviews online. So we did Skype interviews or video calls, but it's always a question of for employers that are you willing to spend your own money to actually move to a different country, or is this something that's temporary or is it long term? So because that's always the question. At least in my experience, whenever I would do interviews, they would look at me with a skeptical face and like, "Are you serious? You're really coming back?" So, and I can't help but understand that personally because you know as compared to other first world countries, you would really think that you're sort of crazy to actually venture back and take a chance in a place where there's 600 graduates that you're fighting over for a position. But so it really again it falls back into how you brand yourself and what kind of promise you're able to give them implicitly, that you're willing to learn, you're the type of person who is in it more for more than just the money, but you want to be an expert in the field and make a positive contribution to any company that you're working for. So hopefully that answers your question, ma'am. Thank you so much. So any other thoughts or questions? Mm, all right. So if anybody else does not have any more questions, so uh, but you do remember something, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're right around the corner, or feel free to email. All right. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share our knowledge and experience to everybody in this room. So thank you.